Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Good morning, everybody. How's it going?
Oh, Mike, it's a good day today. Playoff baseball starts today, which I know how excited you are about that.
So excited. Although I will say the Brewers are doing really well this year. So they're very much up there.
They are actually the number one seed in the National League. But there was also the conversation of they may be a little overrated.
Well, are they peaking too early, right? Anything can happen now once we get to the playoffs.
This is very
Things could change very quickly. So we'll see. Is the depth there? Can we hang on to it? I don't know. Tommy, what's the statistics on this one? How many times does the number one seed actually win the World Series?
So last year it occurred with the Dodgers. The part that you're saying, though, about the trending is really important because a lot of people is like, well, we got to look at the last 200, at bats to say how good this player is. Sure. A player may only get 60 at bats in a playoffs, and that's if they make it. So that you're looking at this like microcosm of the data. Yeah. Yep. So it's very misleading to look at someone's performance over 162 games to say that's how we're going to kind of evaluate what the playoffs do. The Yankees have been a little hot and cold. The Brewers had their really big hot streak. Yep. And again, you're also playing some kind of crappy teams. So there's a ton of things like this is where the kind of, even I think what we do too, there's like the eye test and then the data test. You can't just use the data to say, oh, well, our numbers are great, therefore we're doing great. Right? Like, because there's always the trending. And let me actually kind of go off of this. And I wanted to ask you a question about visualizations and how much we should change our visuals. Was helping someone out. And one of the visuals was it's looking at the last 3 years. And if you can envision in your head a simple column chart that's looking at fiscal year 2023, fiscal year 2024, fiscal year 2025. So 3 columns in this, or 3 data points in this visual. The problem is it's just counting up, right? That's all this is doing. And in my head, I'm like, this number changes so slowly that no one really is going to get any insight out of that. To me, that's something you keep in, very low on the on your report or in a very not prominent space. But again, that comparison of looking at the last 3 years, especially when this year is not over, I've gone so far away from using those, and especially when people are, no, we need to see it. It's like, do you though? So what's your take on this in terms of visuals that feel static or things that, how often do you actually need to change something to provide the better context?
I think it really depends on the conversation you're having with the business around what they're trying to display or what they're trying to show. I think a lot of metrics are very much year over year. I was working with some companies over COVID, and it really changed how they looked at their analytics because they had a very down year during the pandemic piece of this. So because of that, they had to look further back in time, and they were actually measuring themselves based on like the last successful year we had was whatever year that was. And then they said, okay, now our goals and performance are not kind of baselined off of that. So every year is kind of, okay, we need to grow more than last year. But when you have a huge downturn for whatever reason, economic reasons, something happens out of your control, you adapt, right? You try to adapt the company, keep it moving forward. So there was this lull, and because of that, metrics were changing. So your typical 3 years of data chart would not have worked here. You would have rolled through and you would have looked like, oh wow, we're way up to what we were for the last 3 years. Well, not really, because you had a huge downturn because of some catastrophe, right? Something like that. So I think it really depends. A lot of this, I think, is the literacy of the people consuming the data. I think it goes back down to like, what is your data literacy a little bit? Because if you can interpret very heavy things, then you can give more advanced charts, like a scatter chart or a bubble chart. Those things can tell you different insights around the data. And again, we're talking about like aggregations or generalizing. You're rolling something up to like a visual. When you were talking, Tommy, it made me think of the line chart that I've seen on graphs, where the line chart has little to no variance in it, and it's just like a straight line.
Oh yeah.
Or the variance is happening, but the scale of the y-axis is so large, I can't really tell what's happening. Right?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, you're
the
like,
numbers bouncing like 100,000 per month, but the numbers in the tens of millions. Right. I can't see that change. It's just like a flat straight line. Yeah. What do I do with this?
Exactly. What's going to cause them to go, oh, that's different from last week, therefore I should call this person or email this person. I'm such a proponent, Mike, now. And I don't want to think it's a rebuttal, but the only thing I would say about the literacy side is I'm finding it's more easier and easier, or people are more adaptable than you think when you provide the context in a report. So I'm such a proponent, Mike, of how I develop a report now in terms of really making sure that everything has some context on that visual, whether it's a constant line, whether it's conditional formatting.
Mm-hmm.
This goes more to the utility side of a report rather than the nice design side of things. But I am if you look at all the reports I'm building today or what's being developed, there's not a lot of visuals that are pretty standard, so to speak, because it is easy to put a column chart together after you created your model. But I don't think it helps at all without something signifying or distinguishing between good, bad, on target. But I think every other visual just wasted space.
I think you're making a good point. I think you're making a solid point around the expectations of the data versus what the data actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When I'm start adding like expected minimums, expected maximums. And when I was in engineering, we did a lot of like tolerance measurements.
Oh yeah.
So we had like an upper threshold and a lower threshold, and we would measure a bunch of parts, and we would say, okay, we do a run of a certain amount of parts, and based on the size or the volume of run, there's all this statistic stuff that kind of comes into play here. So I mean, this is like your sweet spot. You love statistics. So we're doing a bunch of measurements on parts, and we knew if we were going to get accuracy at the full running production volume, right? Let's say you're going to make 1 million parts. In order to get a representative sample size of 1 million parts, you need to run tests on X number of parts to make sure you've got enough run product or enough product in hand to make sure that statistically you can make an estimate as to like what the real value will be. Now, all kinds of things happen and people change and tools adjust and weird things happen. So yes, it's representative, but you're just trying to get, can you control the process? Right. And is the process controlled enough that you can get the dimensions out of the product or the part that you want? But in all those situations, it was a lot of like min max statistics, bell curves, looking at your sigma values, how many sigma weigh you for the standard means. All this is really good stuff. Another thing I'll just kind of point out here too, Tommy, I hear you talk about this one. Sometimes the data has noise in it, and it just naturally kind of like jumps around a little bit.
Yeah.
It jitters a bit. And so I think sometimes when we look so intently closely at the data points, we kind of lose the signal in part of the noise. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
So that goes back a bit to what you make me think of one of our early episodes. We talked about we don't have the ability to story tell in Power BI. We have the ability to story frame, right? Because the data it can be loud. It can also be not what we want it to kind of show on a report. So it's not like we can guide a user like, hey, this next one's going to show this 5% increase. Well, the data is always dynamically changing, not in the way that we want to show it. But do we have the ability to frame the story with the visuals? Because again, someone may make a giant sale tomorrow and that drastically change how that visual looks or behaves.
Correct.
So there's a huge point there too. And I love this too. And I preface, I love the variable side of what we do. One of my favorite things I worked on, or in a sense, the exercise, it was kind of depressing, but it was actually one of the senior projects we had in sociology was we had to look at a large data set. And one of the data sets was showing that the amount of suicides that occurred in Britain in the fall, in like November, December, were always spiking up. And it was our job to kind of look into that and why. And they gave us some other, either some data sets that were correlated and ones that were just kind of misleading. And it was our job to basically say, can we correlate this with something to explain why there's this increase? So, and there were a lot of other studies like this, but this one was the most telling for me because it was like, there are all these that could kind of be, correlation coefficient, whatever it may be. But what the actual study showed was because of the weather. It had by far in the same months, the most cloudy days. And so that was kind of our argument towards that was you don't see the sun. It's just constantly cloudy for consecutive days. and you can see how that aligned. So I bring that up because this is what I love about what we do is you can just show a volume of sales. You can just show a number on a report, and that's fine. But that's all you're going to get from that to me in terms of action and what people are going to do. But there's so many other ways that we can, in a sense, frame the story that allows people to actually make the data work for them, rather than, our old buzz of we're going to bring insights to data. Well, what does that mean?
I know we're doing a very long intro here. We haven't really announced the topic yet, but we'll get back to it. But I think this is a really relevant point, Tommy. And, one of the pivotal things that kind of really shifted my mindset around what analytics was, and I thought I was pretty good analytically, but what I realized, I was really good about pushing numbers around Excel. I wasn't really good at understanding like what is defining the core drivers of when businesses were earning money or losing money. And only when I got into like category management, really studying like what products are doing well, what products are selling well. I mean, this is in the retail space, but there's a lot of analytics going on there. And there will be points in time where companies strategically are losing money on a particular product, but they're still gaining in market share. And so therefore it's considered a win still. So even sometimes like just being able to wrap your head around some of the things that occur with like market share analysis. Again, it's very difficult to do that because you have to estimate like what your competitors are selling. Is there a central what I was working for was the battery industry, and there's a central body that basically describes all the companies send their sales data to a central place. They anonymize it and then say, here's how many batteries were sold for this quarter of the year. And so therefore, how much you sold. Right. Every other competitor knows how much they sold, and therefore you can calculate from that, like basically rough or estimated market share. I mean, batteries was an interesting market because the customers all registered their vehicles. All the vehicles are registered, and it's public open source information. So you could go buy vehicle registrations and know how many trucks were in, Savannah, Georgia, versus how many sedans. And then you could go up to the Midwest and see who's got so many, like what kind of car is the most popular car in the Midwest. And all those vehicles took a certain kind of battery, and you can make a whole bunch of assumptions around how often are they getting replaced. People are keeping their cars longer now than they ever have before. There's just a lot of numbers in this. And so it was just very fun. But what I learned, again, going back to like your point, Tommy, here, kind of circling back to the main idea, communicating with data. We are visually, instead of using words to talk to someone about something, we're physically using images, graphics, bar charts. And I think the observation that you're saying here around adding boundaries or expectations or suggestions or, other framework onto the visual adds so much more context around these are the actual numbers that we're observing, and here's what we expect it to be doing. Again, this also helps out a lot with this, noise in the signal, right? There's going to be some noise in these lines. Well, maybe we should be looking at that as we should be applying what is the noise ratio of this data? What is acceptable from that standpoint? And when do we fall out of the noise? Then we start taking action, because sometimes we overreact and start allocating things too quickly before it actually is a problem. It may not be just a problem.
Dude, I love it. Yeah, I know we took some time, but this is something I could talk about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I love that conversation. But Mike, we got something I'm going to consider on our game changer watch list. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, let's go into the main topic here before we get into the news. The topic for today will be the impact of user-defined functions in DAX. There's a lot of things called UDFs now. There's a DAX UDF, there's a Python UDF, there's now a Fabric UDF, but this is specifically talking about building a function used inside the DAX environment. So this is being able to reuse DAX code. Marco Russo, who's one of the, not founders, but like pivotal members of the community who knows everything about DAX, extremely excited about this one. And when he's excited about something, I need to take note. We need to listen to what's going on here. And I was reading on Twitter the other day, someone was writing about user-defined functions, and I apologize, I really can't remember the name. I just was scrolling through the feed, and I just saw the comment, and I thought, wow, that's a really good comment. They said user-defined functions is like defining a variable inside DAX. I thought, interesting. So they're saying that the user-defined function is like defining a reusable piece of code as a variable, and you can reuse that variable in any DAX formula anywhere across the model. So you define it, it gets stored, and then from there you can then reuse that function over and over again, which is like almost like storing a variable at this point. So pretty interesting.
And you're right, Mike. It has a lot of buzz right now. I'm seeing most posts on my LinkedIn and on Twitter X to be about right now user-defined functions, and I think with due reason, and it deserves it. So up until this point, Mike, the only place we could really write anything custom was in Power Query. Yeah, there was a Power Query in terms of from the Power BI semantic model point of view. Again, we know
what do you mean by that?
So up until
you're talking reusable functions in Power Query, right?
Or anything custom. If I wanted to write my own action, something to occur over, be iterated in Power Query, I could write a function to do a certain task.
Well, let's be clear. Like all the DAX you write is custom. All the M code you write is custom, but you're talking about
using
like
a standard
defining your own
functions.
You're able to define your own function that rolls up other functions inside itself.
Right. So and I can reuse it
across other queries is what you're trying to get to. Yes,
right.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
Exactly. So that was up until Power Query, and it was very effective. But again, from actually doing our definitions in our metrics and creating our measures, we had the standard library. If you had to reuse something, you had to rewrite it. A variable only lives in that measure. You cannot reuse that measure over multiple models or in other expressions, other measures that you define up until our user defined functions. And let's be clear, we have to say the whole, there are 3 types of UDFs right now. That acronym exists in 3 places in Microsoft Fabric. So if we say UDFs on this podcast, on this episode, we are talking about the user defined functions in DAX, which just came out I think just last week, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, I think it was announced at Fabric Conference Vienna. So it was announced there, and they were kind of like really like, it was also announced, I think, much earlier, but it wasn't, you couldn't play with it. There was nothing like you could actually do with user data function or DAX defined functions. So now you actually have the ability to like go into desktop, turn on preview, and now you can go get DAX functions available to you, so you can go build them, or the user defined function directly in DAX. So this is going to be interesting. I'm already seeing a lot of stuff pop up more as far as like what people are blogging about how they're going to use it. Again, I think this is one of these areas of, we know we needed it. There's probably some use cases right now we can clearly identify, but it's going to get, I think this is going to be one of the ideas or features. This is going to get crazy. There's going to be a lot of these, and it's going to be hard. It's going to proliferate very quickly, and it's going to be difficult to understand all that it can do. And so the community is now just starting to get their heads around, what is this user-defined function thing in DAX? How do we best leverage it? And again, this is a lot of times I think Microsoft does a good job building like a system. They've built a system here, but the community needs to come back and say, what's the most effective way to use this system? What are the patterns we need to start building into the system?
And this is a good starting off point, because I think we're both seeing the buzz here for user-defined functions. Why do you think it's a hot topic right now? Why do you think that you're hearing it everywhere? You're interested in it. There's a reason why it's more than it's just a new feature. So for you, what do you think is like, why are most developers very intrigued and wanting to use it?
Well, before I answer that question, it sounds like we're getting into the main topic already. I wanted to kind of quickly just cover off. Did you want to cover any news or any early items first? You're getting so excited about it. I think we actually forgot about it.
Man, I don't think I got enough sleep last night. So there is there's a news, and it's for tomorrow, which is kind of too late, but you can join us live, I believe. We are doing the Chicago Microsoft Fabric Power BI user group downtown Chicago. We're going to have a great time doing our Chicago crash course in Microsoft Fabric. Mike and I are going to drive through kind of an end-to-end solution in an hour. The basic idea of getting data, integrating that data, transforming it in Microsoft Fabric, utilizing that in Power BI semantic models, and really a common use case that you would use Microsoft Fabric for. We're going to let other people drive if they want. We're going to have the tenant up with a nice license that you can use, kind of test out any feature that you want. And we really want to get the feedback from you guys as well, because another announcement is we will be doing the Chicago user group monthly in person from here on out. So we're starting in October. We're going to keep it going. We're going to keep it going through the cold and then polar vortex that we're probably going to have this year, because that's apparently a thing now that's going to happen this winter for those in the Midwest. But we're going to keep doing it. And we're obviously a big focus is going to be for a lot of users like you who, not to do the PBS thing, but users like you or listeners like you who want to learn more about Fabric, want to get your hands on it. And that's really where we're going to devote a lot of our time with the user group. And it is tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central. It's going to be live on all the YouTubes, and it's going to be in person. If you are just hearing about this and you really want to attend, please message me like immediately as soon as you hear this, and see if I can get you in, because you're going to need to sign in. You're going to need to have your full name, etc. So if you are in the area and you're like, I didn't sign up, but I really want to go, message me like now, pause the podcast and do it. If it's after the second, well, it already happened. Just find us on YouTube.
What will be the best way to get a hold of you, Tommy? Through LinkedIn? LinkedIn would be probably the best one.
So at Tommy Puglia, the base, it's very standard here. So we don't have, fighting Yankees 2405 or whatever kind of thing. So
okay, I'm going to put the Chicago user group inside the chat window here in case you want to go check it out. This is the meetup event for the event that Tommy's talking about. Mm-hmm. And then also, Tommy, I'll put in your LinkedIn page here as well, just in case you are in the Chicago area and you want to join us tomorrow. In order for that to happen, you'll need to be able to ensure that you're on the list, because we are going to be at the Microsoft office. Mm-hmm. And that will require you to be able to sign into that. And that you can't get in without on the front desk. You're there.
Mike, do you want me to take you to a new pizza place, or do we want to try something that's tried and true? Because I like taking Mike to different pizza places here. There's another one I heard about
for good pizza.
Okay.
Always up for it.
You've only been to Bonchi's once. So that's the only thing. You've only had it once in your life, which is, like 18 times not enough. So,
I mean, can you ever have too much pizza? Can you ever have too much Italian food? No.
Bonchi's is so good. Okay. So, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that, not to get a following there too, or we'll continue the user group. But yeah, so that's happening tomorrow, 3 p.m. We're changing the time up too, which is also something we heard from you guys was the 6 p.m. is fine, but it's late. So we're going to try to do it, get out of work early and say you're doing it for work. So what a great
You're going to learn something.
Exactly.
All right. All right, okay. That being said, now I think we're good to go into the main topic now. All right, good. Let's get into our main topic back again. Sorry, Tom, you were commenting around what do I see as being options, or where do I see the community starting to build things inside UDFs?
Why do you think this is such a hot topic, the user-defined functions in DAX? Because we're hearing it everywhere. We're interested. What do you think about it? It's like getting everyone's attention.
I'm going to lean on the idea that this feels a bit more like a community move. And I say that because there are a lot of really smart DAX people in the world that are doing smart DAX things. But it's very difficult to share that DAX with other people. I built a tool a long time ago that would help people build like programmatic DAX or DAX that could be, and you could enter the DAX directly into the tool, and it will then parameterize the DAX, and then you could use that DAX in other models. If you go to dax.powerbi.tips, this is the tool that we attempted to build, which was basically the same thing as a data function, a DAX data function, but like 4 years ago, like way early, right? Because it was like, man, I've got this bit of DAX and I want to reuse it over and over again. How do I build a way of reusing that DAX over and over again? So I think the excitement around DAX user UDFs are the ability to like let the experts build patterns of good things or build the functions that Microsoft's not providing to us. And then inside that, now you have a DAX function that you can just go reuse, and it's leveraged inside the engine. So one of the examples that I think that resonates really well with me are a lot of people like to do SVG measures or SVGs that are measure-based items. Well, already I'm seeing a lot of very simple blogs around, well, if you use this function defines all of the SVG items for you. And when you call the function in the main DAX statement, you just like, rocket icon, blue, and then give it some value or whatever you want. And now what it does is it's able to build all that HTML or SVG information for you automatically in this function somewhere else. So it basically cleans up your DAX. And if you want to reuse that multiple times across multiple different measures, you now have one place to have the definition of it. I mean, this is the definition of like good programming.
Right.
So what you're adding to DAX now is the ability to reuse code over and over again. And now it just works. So I like it. The thing that rubs me the wrong way just about it is just the syntax of it. It seems like it's a foreign language again. It's like another rando language of how you define things and what's a variable and what's an array. I was like, my opinion on this one was like, geez, guys, just make it like Python. Everyone already writes Python and knows it anyways. Like, make it feel more like, make the syntax of the functions more like Python, but they didn't do it. They did it. It looks to me, when I look at it, it feels a little bit more like M. You're writing M inside there, which is, I think, less intuitive. It does have the
same characters, yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't. I don't like it from that regard. It feels like it's going to be. Again, it feels like Microsoft's doing like whatever they think is better for Microsoft, and what's easiest they've already built out somewhere else. I mean, are you going to get better IntelliSense because of it? I doubt it.
Well, there is no IntelliSense with user-defined functions right now.
This is what I'm saying. Like, how long are we going to have to wait now until that comes? Like, so had you used like a more common language, like a Python or something like that, you'd have a parser or something out there that could help you like get what's the format of it should look like corrected. I don't know. It's just my opinion.
I still wish to this day, if I had a birthday or Christmas gift, it would be to get the actual number of overlap between people who know DAX and people who know Python. I want to know what that percentage is, because I want to do an over under with you. I'd love to bet you that, because I think you think it's a lot higher than I do, but there's no way to tell. There's absolutely no way to tell. We can pull we can get a sample. We could go old school sociology here, but
I think the ratio is higher than you think it is. But I think the ratio is higher than you think. And if you look at like programming languages, like I've done a couple of them, right? Python and R are like, and even Visual Basic for that matter, they're pretty straightforward. And for me, like when I'm reading them, they're very human readable and they make sense. Like Python does a lot of really nice things for you. That makes it easy to write. So
I'm not arguing that.
In other languages like C# or, other languages out there, you have to know the exact syntax, the exact way. You have to think exactly like, or she's, controllers and all this. It just, in my mind, hasn't spent enough time learning how those other languages run well. And so I'm just not as interested in learning them because it's just,
that's not
the learning curve is so harder.
No, and that's not my argument at all. I'm saying the people's exposure to it. And this is coming from someone who is kind of using Python every day and has a reason to, and loves it kind of thing. But I don't know if the exposure is there for a lot of people. If I'm just coming from a DAX world, the purpose of a lot of people also knowing Python for most people. So, but that all goes to be said. I do agree with you. The syntax, it is very much now like it's not like we're learning an advanced DAX. No. It really feels like it's DAX 2 or kind of like, DAX alternate DAX right now. So it is very different. And this is going to be part of the learning curve. Yet we're finding that interest. And for me, I find it intriguing. You took the community route here in terms of asking like, why do you think there's the buzz here? I agree with that. Now that I've thought about it, I think that's going to be a huge part, that it's going to be a shared library. To your point, you developed something, but Marco Russo and SQL BI already have something at daxlib.com that already has a library of things as well. Yeah, daxlib.org is an open source repository. I'm sure you're going to have one on Power BI tips. Those always do very well. You had the one with Tableau Editor and the macros. So this is probably another opportunity to share things. But to me, why there's so much buzz right now and why we're getting the interest is I'll take an example from Power Apps, and what was one of the biggest components or one of the biggest features that Power Apps developed. Take an example where I wanted to in Power Apps, I had a gallery, and anytime someone was going to delete something, I wanted to pop up, a window to say, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Well, that can be used in a lot of places, and it's all like you need a component and a grouping and da da da. Well, they finally developed this thing called a component or custom functions, where it's like, you know what, just copy and paste this, kind of define those parameters. So now anytime someone clicks on the delete icon in any gallery in any app, that same window shows up, so to speak, or the same components, which was a game changer for me, and the amount of time that saved. Now, does that equate perfectly with this? Not necessarily. However, for me, I'm looking at the reusability side of this. And one of the things that I'm looking to find, I'm getting more research on, is it says in the documentation and on the blog, you can use this across models. Yes. Now, I'm not seeing how this exactly works, because you can't create user-defined functions in the service. You can only create it in obviously the September version of desktop. This is not a service thing. I think it's in the new tablet editor, because they've been talking about it like crazy too. I've been seeing Kurt and Greg Baldini, the great Baldini, mind you, talk about this like crazy. But the fact that I have very complex formulas, because again, complex formulas are just a way of life too with DAX, something that I need to reuse. And honestly, even if I use once to make sure the logic's right, is such a huge part here. Because Mike, the biggest problem I think people have with DAX learning it, outside of, take away the evaluation context, if you could, is I'm trying to get the number right, but I'm trying to also ensure my code is correct. And I'm trying to struggle with those two things. Like, is the evaluation context correct? But have I also defined all the business logic? And you're trying to tackle those two things at the same time, which can lead to a lot of unnecessary code. And it leads to that meme of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where his eyes are red and staring at the board, where you're just going crazy. So I can also break down, and I think reusability is a single part of this. I'm looking at this to say, let me just define the logic, and then I can reuse the measure. And that's where I'm seeing that why it's on my game changer watch list, where I can focus on the business definition, the core logic here, and then we can focus on the evaluation context. Then we can focus on if the numbers are right in certain visuals. So just being able to do that for me is where I'm like, this is going to be a central part. Like when you think about what we call the common flow, game changer qualifies for us, or at least my definition is if it changes my normal behavior in the process. And to me, this is absolutely something that it's looking at. Now, it's only been out for so long, so it's hard to say yet, but that's where I'm seeing the big change here outside of even the community thing.
Yeah. And I agree with your comments here, Tommy, on this one. This is a very big shift. This is a feature I think that the community's been asking for a long period of time, right? This is something reusable DAX, and to your point, reusing it across multiple models is going to make a lot of sense to do this. Why I'm excited about the community side, I'm going back to my comment here just a little bit earlier, just to kind of explain a bit more here, is I think it's so important because, again, when you have something new like this come out, there's going to be a couple of people at the very beginning who are experts in this area, who understand how it works, who are going to build good examples of these pieces of code that you're going to want to get your hands on. And this could be inside your organization, right? If you have a larger organization, there's going to be parts of code that needs to be reused. I think this is a good best practice. In general, the people that are going to know how to do this is going to be small. And so the fact that you can reuse these or put them in multiple models or make a single TIMDL file that you import in multiple models that just give you these functions will be extremely useful to organizations so they can reuse this. So I think I like the idea of it. What I worry about is the tool exists, but there's no store to go buy them from, right? So this is like, I have a hammer, a really nice hammer, but I can't go into a store and see all the hammers laid out and then choosing the one that I need, right? So the analogy here is like there's not a store, there's not a place where we can go get all these things. I'm seeing some things from SQL BI. They're starting to do this, but the implementation is poor, I would say, I guess at this point, right? You can go get functions from DAX library. So there's like SQL BI made this DAX library. They call these things packages. It's literally just bundled up code. You still have to copy paste. Not like not implemented the way it should be implemented. Like, no, like it's just not. Yes, interesting. Is it the right way to go? Probably not. Like there's, again, this is one of the things where the community hasn't quite figured out the right level of friction to put on these things. So stay tuned, Tommy.
Okay.
There's going to be a better thing in the future.
As of today, this is pretty okay. You know what? I'm all ears, and I'm on the edge of my. No, I get the implication. I got the innuendo there, kind of thing. Like, just in case, I'm kind of thinking, I know where you're at, kind of thing.
I know where this goes. I've seen this story before.
Your developers, you're already messaging your developers.
We've already got something cooking, right? We're getting. Okay. So stay tuned.
I love it. I'm all, but I got to argue with you with this copy and paste, and with Tyndall. This is your jam, man. So that's dead simple. Show me something easier. Great.
Yes and no. If you know what you're doing, though, like, so that's the last step.
Who doesn't want to copy and paste?
That's the last step. Go over to daxlibrary.com.
Yeah,
right. daxlibrary.org. And if you go there, you'll see like, okay, there's a whole bunch of examples that are there now showing up. Okay, fine. There's like literally a 1-line sentence as to what it does. That's not helpful, right? Let's just play this forward. Let's say there's hundreds of things that show up here. Like, this is a Git repo that's just getting populated and people are just adding things to it. Great. That's really exciting, right? Get your name out there. There's stuff in there that's really interesting, right? Okay. But when I look at these DAX measures, I have to understand, is the title or name of it useful enough to understand what it is? How many format strings are we going to get? There could be like 100 of these things. So how do I know which one is going to be the one that I need to use? Is there a place where I can easily implement it? Like, I look at this page and go, this is interesting, but it's just going to become a mess of stuff that no one knows how to use. Seriously. Okay. It's going to be interesting, but when you get to hundreds of snippets of code, how do you know which ones are going to be useful or not? That's where I think the community part of this really becomes very important around this, because yes, you can give a common place for people to go land and push this code to, but like this is not going to be helpful long term. Like, it's going to create a lot of confusion, and you're going to need to really know what you're doing to be able to evaluate what people are building.
It's a heck of a lot better than user data functions right now in terms of my ability to browse. And listen, we're 2 weeks in. Like I said, you got something better. Cannot wait to see it. I'm not saying listen, I've seen what you can do. I have I do all the template things. I love the GitHub repo. So I'm actually saying this genuinely. Can't wait to see what you got, kind of thing. But the fact that we have something, even just to copy and paste, Mike, and I hear what you're saying. I really do. But just the fact that I can take something in Tyndall, our favorite coding language, especially yours right now too, or the favorite scripting, it's a win. To me, this is definitely a win. And listen, I cannot wait to see, because honestly, bring on whatever makes my life more efficient, whatever makes things easier to use. And I you know me, you give me something with an install button, install, just take it all, kind of thing. So I can be very greedy that way with stuff like that. So I can't wait. But this also goes to another question or another kind of conversation around this, because we're talking about for experienced users. You said that a few times. I'm looking at user data functions in general, not necessarily from the ease of install or use, but or the whatever gallery it's in. Is this more for peer developers, or is this part of everyone's workflow? So that's what I want to ask you here, because is user defined functions meant for specialized teams, for people who are the core BI team, or anyone who's developing Power BI reporting or semantic models rather should understand and use a gallery? Like, this would be relevant to them, whether it's, one sanctioned by Microsoft or community led. is everyone going to find value from a gallery or from using user-defined functions?
I think everyone will find value from it. I believe it could be used by anyone, but where I would draw the line for me would be it's going to be a pro developer feature, right? It's going to be in, again, we're going back to like what kind of model should be using this, right? Again, I don't know a lot about the performance of this stuff yet. How well will this perform? How much DAX can you throw at something? Like this is one of these areas where I think it could be very quickly abused by people by over putting too much code into a specific thing and not just using the standard DAX functions. Right. I could see people, someone in the community saying like, look, I've removed all the calculate statements and I've replaced them with all user defined functions now that do something totally separate. Like, okay, interesting, like fun. Like, but at the end of the day, it's like, how, is this really getting closer to our end objective, which is better insights, better reports, better semantic models, right? That's the end game here. And some of these things, I think there's going to need to be some like level of like classification of what measures are doing what things. We're back to the same problem, Tommy. Like, can we make a DAX UDF in a thin report? Does it have to be in the model side of things? Like, I haven't heard a lot of talking about that yet. Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. I physically have not done the research to like try it out. Like, so that would be interesting. What's the performance of these DAX user data functions? Is it actually performant to do it that way? Is it more performant to define the DAX user function? Or is it the same performance? It's just bundling up code and just reusing it multiple times whenever it executes. I don't know. We'll have to see how that kind of pans out. That's where I'm interested in seeing the proliferation of community level things. It's just exciting. It's very good to see that. But on the flip side of this, I'm also looking at going, okay, we need a better system of just upvoting and downvoting things. I mean, again, I'm going to daxlibrary.org. There's already like a bajillion formatted items you can go search for. And, yes, interesting. But like now, there's filters in here that has like a filter for one item. Like that's not helpful. Like there's a thing called an audit tool. There's one person who's made an audit tool with a DAX. Like this website potentially will get out of hand very quickly if it's left unregulated.
So for me, I'm looking at the adoption on the user, and I take it from a training point of view. If someone said develop a series on DAX or update your series on your training on DAX, where would I put user defined functions in terms of the order? And I'm looking at this, and there's two things that are coming to mind on where I would place this training. If I was training someone from beginner to advanced, it's going to be conceptual and workflow is where I'm kind of taking what type of person it is. Conceptual is the concepts you need to know in DAX to be sufficient, just to survive, in a sense, to float, not necessarily to make your boat go faster or to be an expert, in a sense, swimmer, but can you float in DAX? And so obviously that means we're going to probably push back user defined functions in terms of the type of user that's going to use it. Because if you don't understand evaluation context, if you don't have a handle on the functions and you don't have the experience, then user defined functions don't do anything for you. Yeah, you could copy and paste these and try to use them, but you're not going to be creating anything, right? So yeah, it's going to be helpful to have galleries like this and things that are being created. But at the end of the day, too, if you don't understand DAX, I'm not teaching someone this like right off the bat. The other part is the workflow. So
that's my point. It's a pro developer. It's someone who's already familiar with a lot of the ecosystem, and they're looking for a way to like be more efficient and reuse things. Like this is purely in the pro developer space.
But then the other side of me thinks of workflow too. So when we define pro developer, if I had a spectrum of the type of, again, persona, right? And you think beginner, I'm building reports, I'm just learning. I just did dashboard in a day, and now I'm going to create semantic models.
Don't use UDFs.
No, right.
Not for you.
Right. But I think this, to me, I don't think it's all the way on the other side of I am 5 years into Power BI. I could be an MVP. I'm certified. This could be very much in the middle for me, Mike, when I'm looking at that type of user. If you were to put it on that gauge where it's not necessarily, it can be a pro, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that pro developer type of person. Because if I get the concepts of DAX and I understand business logic, this could be someone that is dedicated to a department, kind of like the spoke, right? I don't think this is just a hub use case here. This can very much.
You're describing to me the pro, like you understand DAX pro.
Okay.
I don't care where you live, visual side, IT side, like doesn't matter to me. You're a professional. Like you're working with DAX enough that you understand it. Pro. Like I'm going to be more cut and dry about, like, I'm not going to worry about the role of where they sit. I'm going to say that's going to be the person that is, if you know what you're doing, this will advantage you. Pro.
Okay. I see. So, but you mentioned the pro developer, and for me, Mike, I kind of see them now, at least where we're heading, as almost two separate things. I can be a pro creator and I can be a pro developer. And to me, I see those as two different personas.
I don't use that language when I talk about it. I talk about the report builder and the data modeler. I talk about those two different areas.
Sure.
In those personas, how I look at it, because of someone who crafts the report pages, designs the UI, builds out the pages, works with a model that someone else may have built, I do expect if you're a pro report builder, there'll be parts of this that you will want to use. You're not going to probably write, a really crazy, geographic something. You're probably not going to build some kind of crazy time series something, right? But you might use a lot of SVGs. You might use a lot of visual side of the things. So this is where DAX becomes, it transforms to what you need it to be, right? Some of DAX is very heavily calculation and aggregation based. Another part of DAX, another whole discipline around DAX is the stylizing, the formatting, the conditional formatting of DAX, right? So there's this part that kind of flips between both sides of things. And so that's where I look at the DAX functions and say, well, it fits the roles, the personas, pro report developer, pro data modeler. It still fits pro in both those levels. Look, you're not going to go out. If you're building SVG measures, you're probably a pro. Like you've figured out enough to get into code and write a lot of code.
I think we're saying the same thing. So
we're probably saying the same thing.
Yeah. So I think a good exercise, do you want to say anything on here? Because I want to kind of put up a scenario that I think will also be a good exercise.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So let's go to our data czar. One of my favorite things to do on this podcast that I think really also helps too, not just from the individual, but in terms of how this actually going to get adopted. You're the data czar, organization large, whatever, parameters you want to put on this. How soon are you pushing this in terms of getting this now part of the workflow adopted, that, hey, we're going to start updating reports, not just creating reports with user defined functions, but we want to start migrating some of our current semantic models that are certified into user defined functions. You as a data czar, what are you looking at from a project or a timeline point of view to get this kind of implemented? Or if at all?
Timeline. It's
like how long? Now. Yeah, no, I'm saying for you want to start pushing this in the organization as the data czar.
It sounds like you found a solution looking for a problem. I wouldn't even frame it that way.
Okay.
Interesting.
Right? Sure.
I would attach it to where are we struggling with our current deployment or development of DAX? Is there parts of it that need to be reused? So this is going to take like an architect level person to step back and say, do we have 15 models? Is there parts of 15 models that we're reusing over and over again? Okay. You kind of need a comprehensive look at like what's going on and saying, where do we strategically apply this? Or is there something I'm trying to solve in DAX that just doesn't work very well? Like I would argue, again, back to the SVG side of things, right? I think that's a big problem to solve. I look at SVG measures and think, this is a pain in the butt to run. Like this is really hard to write. It's not easy. I don't want to do it every single time on every single model. So I would walk away from SVG measures because they're so difficult to implement. Now, if I could dedicate someone to focusing their attention on building these prettier stylized things for my certified reports, then yes, this would be something that I would want to package up and reuse that knowledge over and over again. That's what functions are really. It's packaged, it's bundled knowledge into a reusable an element. So I would probably approach it the other way. I would probably start on the model side saying, where do we have challenges? What's difficult? And then looking for are there of the challenges we already have, are there specific things from the DAX user data functions that would solve those problems? One of them for me right now is I don't want to write a bunch of SVG all over the place. Sure. I want to define it once and be done with it. Clean, done. That's one of my use cases. So if we have reports that have those kind of things in it, I would identify that use case. We'd go build the functions. We'd incorporate them. So that's as a data czar or that person who's kind of architecting at the higher level. That's how I would approach the problem.
So, man, that is completely different from my take from this, because you're looking at this more almost from a custom ad hoc point of view. Do we have right now specific issue, reasons that we should use the user data define function and implement that? For me, I took that scenario as, can user defined functions be part of our normal work, make us more efficient in our current workflows in general? So I took a more general approach to that, where rather than, we're using SVGs, that's a good case, implement it. I'm looking at this as, regardless of long-term and now, would we be more efficient using user-defined functions in the common workflow? If the answer is yes, when in a sense talking to your architects, then I would start the process of that in terms of beginning to like.
But what's your
yeah?
But what you're talking about is so like not tangible to me. Like you're describing things that are like, it's not tangible. Are these things helpful? How do you quantify? Yes, but what are they helpful for? Like my question to you're just saying, are they helpful? Do they save me time? Okay, what are the examples of that? I'm just going down a layer deeper and saying writing SVG measures is going to be the time saver for me.
Yeah. Right? So I see what you're saying.
Like I would identify the actual situation and when this thing applies, when is it good to be used? So that's what I'm starting from. I'm not going to start from the other side of things where you're kind of like, well, is it useful? Then we should figure it out. It'd be more like I need to make sure I clearly identify a problem and how does this make that problem go away?
So, and I completely see what you're saying. And I may be coming from a more theoretical point of view right now than practical, but one thing you talked about being messy with the gallery. One of my concerns, if I went in individual, is some of my semantic models have user defined functions and some of them don't. And even if if they're in a sense doing the same logic, that to me is where I would be concerned. And I would personally, from a data czar point of view, would want to stray away from is I would rather there's a practical approach, just like in your center of excellence in your knowledge center on how we develop models, is if there are very general or common, baseline use cases for user defined functions, you're using them. It is part of the workflow of our organization. Again, this could be more theoretical, but I have a fear when you look at large organizations that if some people know user-defined functions and others don't, and some people are using user-defined functions and others aren't, then once you open up a model, if that's now your model and has all these user-defined functions, and that's not part of that team's workflow, what are they going to do? So, and that's the concern I have. You either have this part of, the common use case, or you don't use it at all. And that's where my concern is, because this can be something so integrated into your model. It's like you either use DAX or you don't. You can't have some models that are all implicit measures and the others are explicit, because again, based on each team, especially the more enterprise side of things, it has to be a common understanding. Everyone has to have the concepts. Everyone needs to know it. You can't just have, the reason I'm saying this is because I've done this myself, where I'm like, I learned something new in Power BI. I'm going to implement this new feature. I had to hand it off. That team didn't know what it was. Never used it. Never had to. But because I was always on the cutting edge, right? Like I was doing things that honestly, I probably shouldn't have. I should have waited until the baseline developers were using it as well. So that's where I'm coming from when I look at this. It's great if I can use it, but if I'm working in a larger team or with other pro developers in the organization, this has to be something that there's a baseline being used.
Interesting. I like your point around that one, though. I do think there's this idea of like in larger teams, you just can't implement something and roll with it. And this is maybe why I'm more of the opinion of find a problem that this solves well and start there. Because, I mean, just looking at the different, again, going back to daxlib.org, right? Again, the links in the description or in the chat window here on this one. Like even clicking on some things, I'm looking at some things here now. Like, there's no images attached to any of these things, right? So I can't, you can't go through these things and say, okay, if you're building an SVG or what does the measure do? There's just again, this is one of these areas of like, there's such little documentation out there. Unless you start experimenting with these things and like really spending some time on this one, stuff's just going to get thrown out there. And it really, the story becomes like, how do you build these things in a way that actually makes sense so people can like use these things in a, again, usable way. I'm going to also maybe pick on you a bit about this idea of like, what you said, and this is, I'm probably maybe going a bit too extreme on this one as well. You said a comment around like, if you are, so let's take a team. Right? There's you and a couple other people. You find user data functions that they prove to be very valuable in this particular area. Look, I've got this complex calculation. We use this across multiple models. I can build the math of that. I can do that mathing of the thing very well inside the function, inside this user data function. Okay, interesting. Great. Tommy, you solved a problem. What is the path to learn or teach the rest of the team to do this one? And I think a lot of times you put up this barrier of like, well, this is new, we shouldn't do it, or this is new, everyone needs to learn it. I feel like there needs to be more emphasis on, addressing the problem, and then from there focusing on, okay, how do we land this, and what does the communication of that look like for the broader team? If you to your point, we shouldn't be building things into models in brand new features that come out of Power BI or features that are getting GA'd, unless we've kind of had a review with the team and someone at the top is saying, this is important enough, we're going to use it. Let's get everyone on the same page as to how we use it. And this is where I think very early in the conversation, it made a lot of sense for me to say, let's stand back and focus on what are the problems this is solving. Because then I think it's a much easier communication pattern to say, team, we've got problems with reusing SVGs in DAX. We're using it in our reports. Our customers demand it. In our certified reports, we're using it. I want to do a better job of managing what that is. And if we need to make updates to it, we need a process by which to govern this. And so I think a lot of times what you're speaking here to, Tommy, is there's a very lack of process. It's a lack of rigor around development. It doesn't exist. And so what happens is we have a bunch of people just trying a bunch of things. And so after people try a bunch of things, we kind of like get a little disorganized, and then we have to reorganize ourselves. And then we kind of stumble down the path together, but with little to no process. And this is where I think Matthias Tierbach has got like a really good, strong scenario around this, where he's building DevOps and automation and tooling and all these things, where how we build stuff needs to be a process. And I think a lot of organizations in the data world don't follow this, or haven't thought about a process, or they just do what they've been doing all along. It's just a ticket system. So there is a process, but it's very minimally thought out at most. And so when you start really talking about process that everyone understands, now you can really start wringing out value from the team much faster.
Preach, brother, because I completely agree. So let's take an example here. Bernard Aguelo Rosello. We've actually talked to him in the user group. He's one of the best DAX people you'll meet. He has a thing here called Everyday KPI. What if, Mike, I randomly just like, I like this. This is actually great. I'm going to change all of my models and every KPI I have on a visual in my reports to using this user-defined functions, because there's more than one. Well, then let's say someone on my team or whatever happens, is like, I need to update that report, or I want to take that over. And they go, what the heck is this? Because they never had that exposure. What if I need to change the logic there now, and I have to go to the user-defined functions, right? Even though every other report in our organization is using normal DAX, but this one guy went rogue and put all of his KPIs to this custom package, right? And to your point, this is a process around pure development. This is where Actually, now the more I think about it, dude, you talked about the developer role here. We have to treat it that way. We have to treat this as when we'll talk about source control too in that element, because Mike, I got burned for implementing the preview feature of the filter pane because no one else did. And they didn't know what to do when they wanted to change it, because I was like on vacation, and God forbid I went on vacation back in the day. And it was like stuff like that. So this is not to take anything away from user defined functions, but this is also our podcast. We're talking about this in the real world. We're talking about this when you're trying to implement this. Now, as a consultant, it's great because I can talk to the client and say, hey, guess what? We're going to use preview features. User defined functions are one of the things. And I can just go at it, have fun kind of thing. But if I'm working in a team, and again, even if it's just me, if I move to Sicily, I have to assume that next person knows user defined functions and is proficient. And someone has to be proficient in this skill as I am. And that's how you have to take this.
Yes, but it's also like this is new. Everyone's learning together.
Right.
It's a collective learning with all the people to figure things out. So yes, is there going to be an expert day one? There will not be, right? It's a matter of, can you identify good use cases now that help you out, that take minimal effort to learn? And then as the team progresses, people will find and this is where I was talking about earlier, the community is going to figure out the best places to apply this stuff, right? The good stuff will boil to the top. The junk stuff will just kind of sift to the bottom, and there's going to be a whole bunch of things that people just do not use or do not download, and you'll never look at them again, right? 100%. So this is the same pattern that happens inside your organization when you make reports a commodity. When everyone can build a report and everyone can make data products, basically, you're going to have a whole bunch of them being creative. Not all of them will be useful, and you're going to have to figure out what is the strategy. How do you bubble the best stuff to the top to reuse that information? Dude, you need to scrape off the cream on the top. That's the best part, right? You're going to have a whole bunch of things that are going to sink down to the bottom. So I really think this is super useful. I think we probably need to wrap on some closing thoughts here around, DAX user data functions. Good topic here. I'm very excited to see what's coming out from the community. I'm excited to see what will be happening, how people are going to land this stuff. It'll be very interesting to understand more about what is going to be used here. I'm optimistic that it will go well. I'm just a little bit skeptical at this moment because it's so new. There's a lot of hype around it, and I don't think the community has really figured out where's the best place to use it. This feels to me a little bit like bookmarks. There's bookmarks now. We can do all these amazing things, and now people build a whole bunch of reports with bookmarks in them. And then 6 months later, you're like, how do we maintain this? What does this look like? How do we reuse this stuff? Like, this feels a little bit like that, but again, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just being cautious because with the right proper community tools and documentation and the right implementation of this, it could go really well and make it really easy for people to see, how you could leverage this new technology, which I think is a good thing.
So, and for me, it's really, there's the two modes of thought here. Is from the individual developer's point of view. This is something that, learn, be proficient in. And I think this is going to be a big part of what we do. But the other consideration here is you need to think about this from a governance point of view. And that has to be a part of the consideration to implement this in any organization, whether you're enterprise or even whether you're small business. Because again, this is one of those cut and dry cases of whatever you do, you have to have a baseline on anyone who would take that over. Because this is new, it's in preview, and it's just like if you do something complex in DAX, well, you better be able to explain it, and you better make sure that someone can take that over. This is a cut and dry case of that too. That does not take away at all from contributing, from learning it, and from utilizing it. But we have to keep in mind too the wider aspects and impact of this once we introduce this to a culture or a team. So, I love the conversation today.
Very good things. I thought it was very useful as well. I'm just going to challenge a little bit of where I apply this. I think this is definitely the right move for Microsoft. I think this is going to continue shifting how people build things in models. We're going to hear a lot more about this in the future. I also feel like, the community doesn't know what's coming here. Like this is a herd mentality. Everyone's rushing to it right now. And we're going to have to figure out how to sift this out and organize it later on. So I think this is a topic that I will stay close to. I will definitely monitor, listen to it. I think we're going to have many more conversations around. We should revisit this, Tommy, in 3 to 6 months and then say,
oh yeah,
hey, this feature's either like I use it every day, or do you remember that feature called DAX UDFs? Like, do you use it at all? Like, are you from it? I think without finding proper use cases for it, it potentially is going to be more of the, yeah, it's a nice feature and I use it when I need to, but it's not revolutionary. I don't use it every single day. So we'll see. I could be wrong on this one. This prediction may not be right.
I can't wait.
Thank you all for listening to the podcast. We appreciate your hour of time with us. We know you can spend your time anywhere else listening to or doing other things. Hopefully this added some insight to you around what a DAX UDF is, where you might use it, and where the community is starting to build these things as well. Hopefully that keeps you up to speed. That being said, please like and update this, or like and share this episode. We would love for you to get the word out there. Also, for those of you who are really invested in what we're doing here, we really appreciate you joining. We'd love you to become a member. Please become a member down below on our YouTube channel. You'll get the earliest releases of all videos that we're doing, and there's going to be more content coming from Power BI Tips that will also be members only content in the future here. So stay tuned, more things to come. We really appreciate you all for joining today. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. And please share with a friend, since we do this for free. Do you have a question, idea, or topic you want us to talk about? Maybe you've done something with UDFs right now that you cannot wait to share or tell us or disagree with us. Well, guess what? You can do that. Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.